Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today to one of the major infrastructure projects in the Peoria area. You can see all the cranes on the river and construction activity around us as IDOT works to replace the 73-year-old eastbound span of the McClugage Bridge. This bridge is a vital link between Peoria and the communities of East Peoria, Washington, Germantown Hills, and beyond, with over 20,000 vehicles crossing the bridge each way every day. The current eastbound bridge, which I crossed thousands of times going to work at Illinois Central College, will be demolished and reconstructed as part of this multi-million dollar project. Infrastructure projects like this are vital to the continued economic growth of our region. I am very pleased that the state of Illinois is investing so much in Peoria and the surrounding communities. And now it is my honor to introduce someone who is dedicated to rebuilding Illinois, someone who is keeping the citizens of Illinois safe, and someone committed to making Illinois a better, fairer place to live for all of its citizens, Governor Jb Pritzker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to Mayor Ali. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for every day really standing up for the health and safety of the people of your city. I also want to thank Leader Jahan Gordon Booth and Leader Dave Kaler, Representative Ryan Spain, who are here today. It is always great to be with you to celebrate progress for the Peoria region, and thank you also for the number of times that we work in unison to get things done for the people of this region. Preserving and growing Illinois' long legacy in the transportation sector is all the more important as we shape an inclusive economic recovery in response to the pandemic. And thanks to the largest infrastructure investment in our state's history, we get to do just that over and over again here in Peoria, in central Illinois, and up and down our 57,000 square miles of the state. So just as we marked the on-time and on-budget completion of the downstream Murray-Baker Bridge last fall, we're back in Peoria, not even a year later, to mark progress on another major thruway, the $167 million McClugage Bridge project, carrying eastbound US 150 from Peoria to East Peoria, on track for completion in 2023. Its investments, the program's investments, like the rehabilitation of the McClugage Bridge, they are representative of the kinds of things that we're doing all across the state. But this bridge was first built in World War II and carries about 20,000, as the mayor said, 20,000 eastbound vehicles a day. That will not only support freight routes on Illinois' roadways, but make day-to-day life easier for Peoria and East Peoria families who use this bridge to get groceries or to see their doctor or to visit the pharmacy. With a new deck bridge that will nearly double its width, the new structure will not only be safer, smoother, and faster at larger capacity, but we're adding a protected bike and pedestrian path. So this beautiful crossing point over the Illinois River will be all the more accessible to everyone. This all-hands-on-deck effort to rebuild Peoria consists of nearly 75,000 cubic yards of concrete, over 40 million pounds of steel, and roughly 750,000 man-hours by completion. None of this can happen without the amazing men and women of labor who make sure that the work that's done is of the highest quality and the highest safety ratings. And so I want to thank Clint Drury, the Executive Director of the West Central Building and Construction Trades, and all of your members, and Matt Bartolo, Matt Bender, Paul Flynn, and Darren Smith, My thanks to each of you and to all of your members for all that you do to improve people's lives all across central Illinois. In fact, I want to ask for a round of applause for our members, men and women of labor. I also want to recognize the Highway Construction Careers Training Program. It's an IDOT partnership with Illinois Central College to provide women and students of color the opportunity to get on-the-job experience toward full-time work and a career in the construction trades. Some of these grads are here with us today, including Raylan Johnson, who will share her story with us in just a moment. So let's give all of them a big round of applause, too. Rebuild Illinois has kept this project moving forward while bringing about so many other improvements to the Peoria area. That's the power of a generational commitment to invest in the infrastructure that keeps us going and growing. So far, that includes nearly $10 million to replace the too low portion of Pinecrest Drive over I-74 that's been too much of a nuisance for far too long. It includes the now complete new Farmington Road Bridge over Kickapoo Creek that required $20 million worth of patching, resurfacing, and drainage improvement on I-74. Even as we celebrate this project today, we're not resting on our laurels. Many other major projects are ongoing in the Peoria region, including improving guardrails on Illinois 6 and reconstructing Western Avenue in downtown Peoria. We are revitalizing our state, and we're restoring progress here in Peoria, dedicating $45 billion to problems all across the state that have sat untouched for decades, taking the weight of car repairs and old public infrastructure off of our people's backs, and supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs along the way. So thank you all for joining us today, and with that, I'm pleased to introduce IDOT's illustrious and industrious leader, Secretary Omer Osman.
Governor, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you to Governor Pritzker, members of the General Assembly, labor representatives, and our friends in Peoria and East Peoria, starting with Mayor Lee. Thank you, Mayor. Peoria is my home. Senator Kaler.
I'm not Jahan Gordon Booth. Thank you, Governor, for coming to Peoria with such good news. Thank you, Mayor Ali, for your leadership. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your leadership. This is a great moment because what we celebrate is something that we all agree upon. And I want to recognize my colleague, Senator Wynn Stoller, who is also here. The reason you have Democrats and Republicans at this event is that infrastructure is important. It's not a bipartisan issue. There aren't Republican roads and Democrat roads or Republican bridges and Democrat bridges. They're just bridges and roads. And we need to make sure that in Illinois that they are up to the A standard. This bridge is vital for this area because not only does it take people to and from work, but it moves goods and services through our area. This community is going to grow. It's growing right now. And we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support all the activities that are going on. Let me just mention one other thing, and the governor mentioned it briefly. This is going to have a dedicated pedestrian and bike lane. This is something that Kinzel and Karen and I and Leader Gordon Booth have been working on with the city of Peoria and East Peoria. It's going to connect hundreds of miles of bike trail through this area. And why do you think people come to a place like Peoria to live? It's because of the quality of life. It's because there are things to do. There is environment and nature to enjoy, and this becomes part of that. Thank you, Governor, for bringing that good news to us. And now, let me introduce my good friend and my colleague, Leader Jahan Gordon Booth.
There should be a certification for getting your mask off with earrings on. Good afternoon, and so good to be with you in this space on this beautiful Monday. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, for always being a friend to this region of the state. I can't tell you how much it is such a pleasant feeling to know that you have a governor who is willing to not only spend so much time in our part of the state, but also put his money where his mouth is in terms of directing resources to this part of our state. You know, Peoria is a beautiful, as you can see, is a beautiful, beautiful place to live, grow, and raise a family. And investment is what we have needed for a really, really long time. So the governor being here with us today, if we could give him another round of applause for making Peoria a priority investment as it relates to our capital bill. I'd be remiss if I did not give another extra special thank you to the men and women of the labor movement who are really going to be the true backbone of ensuring that this project is done on time and built well. We could not have the beautiful infrastructure that we have in our part of the state without the men and women of labor, so thank you so very much. You know, when we talk about the importance of infrastructure, we cannot forget how many jobs it brings back to our community. And one of the things, as we were working on this capital bill in 2019, I really want to highlight is the fact that as we were putting together this capital bill and talking about the importance of infrastructure and how important it is for the moving of goods and services to and fro, the importance and the safety component of why the infrastructure dollars were needed. But one of the key factors in terms of putting forth and putting together this capital bill was also the importance of highlighting diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to who was going to get the contracts and what the workforce would look like. And I'm proud to say that in this infrastructure package, we were able to put in language that ensured that as it related to the largesse of the state's dollars that are invested, that are importantly invested in our community, that the people who are able to work on these projects and that other contractors on these projects are also going to be, they're going to look like the community. And that's why you see women, men, people of color up here today, because that is the importance and the intentionality behind the work that we're doing, because we want everyone in and no one left out. I think that's an important thing to notate because in the last, 16 months or so, there's been a lot of talk about equity and inclusion. But I want to say that this governor and his staff was talking about this long before last summer, before the unfortunate death of George Floyd. And I think that that's important to notate because it shows that equity is not performative. it's real and it has a real impact on people's lives and neighborhoods all across the city. So thank you so much, Governor, for being a partner in equity and inclusion as it relates to infrastructure projects. You know, not so long ago, just a few, I don't even want to say a few short miles, about a mile and a half that way, I think it was October, as a part of the Build Illinois project, we were able to light the Murray-Baker Bridge on Halloween last year. And the next person you will hear from was also at that bridge lighting. The next speaker that you'll hear from is a leader in the General Assembly. He is the husband of Ashley. He is a millennial father, and he's also someone who was born and raised in Peoria, just like me, who loves Peoria dearly. And we may come from opposite sides of the aisle, but when it comes to issues that impact Peoria, we are always on the exact same page to lift Peoria up. I remember during the makings of the Capitol bill, we would be sitting back dreaming about all of the projects that we could bring to fruition in Peoria and to this region. And we are beginning to check that list off, but we have a lot more to come. And that's what happens when people work together. With no further ado, please put your hands together for Leader Ryan Spain. Sorry about that.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to see everyone gathered here for another important bridge celebration. I think there's probably no bridge within 100 miles of this point that won't be affected and impacted by our bipartisan investment in infrastructure in the state of Illinois. I'm so glad to be joined by my friend and colleague, the newest member of the Peoria Legislative Delegation, and that's Senator Wynn Stoller. And everyone here is united in the importance of making investments in infrastructure in support of the thousands of people each and every day that use these bridges to come to the city of Peoria to work, to commute back and forth to their homes, and to make sure that economic growth is a viable opportunity in the Peoria region. Gathering here on this on-ramp, it reminds me of something from probably 15 years ago. Raise your hand if you remember Meet Me in the Middle. Were any of you in attendance at that? So that was one of our last big projects on the Murray-Baker Bridge. And it was so interesting, Governor, we had a big community celebration in the middle of an interstate bridge. And it was unique because we would never have the opportunity to stand in that spot and look around from a pedestrian level at the scale of the Illinois River, the beauty of these bridges, and sort of marvel at this infrastructure. That changes now with this bridge, with the McClugage Bridge. And you've heard about how the vision of our community, and hopefully is channeled through your legislative leaders, have implemented something that will be very unique here. A walking, running, and bike trail across the Illinois River, connecting the historic investments that we've made all throughout this community in a robust trail system that brings economic growth and quality of life to our community. This will be a meet me in the middle opportunity each and every day on the McClugage Bridge. I'm so thankful for the leadership of IDOT, because under the leadership of Secretary Osmond, we see a new vision for IDOT. You know, the IDOT of decades ago was moving cars as quickly and safely as possible, and they still do that better than anyone else in the country. But there is a growing recognition that there is more to our infrastructure than just motorized vehicles. We are doing that now with the McClugage Bridge. And so, Secretary Osmond, you're one of my favorite Peorians, and we're always so grateful for your great work here in Peoria and throughout the state of Illinois. Secretary, thank you. And then lastly, we are so honored and appreciative of the dedicated work of the men and women of the building trades who are here each and every day working in dangerous conditions and doing an incredible job. I want to thank our laborers, our iron workers, our operating engineers. Each and every trade that's represented on this project behind us deserves our utmost thanks, gratitude, and respect. And this work is so important. And actually, I'm so honored now to be able to introduce someone to share their story. a member of the Carpenters Local 237, and that's Raylan Johnson. Raylan, please come to the podium and tell us about your work, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Raylan Johnson. I'm a graduate from HCCTP. I'm a graduate from HCCTP Class 25. I am currently working on the McClugage Bridge project as a second-year carpenter apprentice in Local 237. If it wasn't for the class, I wouldn't be standing up here today. And that's all. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Raylan. And I just want to say, we all feel just as lucky as you feel that you are becoming a member of the trades and trained and are expanding what we all know as the representation that the labor unions across our state want to have across women and people of color. And we're really, really happy about the work that you're doing. I also want to just take a moment before I take questions from members of the media to say I failed in my initial introductions to recognize Win Stoller, the new senator from this area. And you have a lot to live up to, because when I come to Peoria, I introduce leader, leader, leader. I expect that the next time I come, that you'll hear Leader Win Stoller. And we got to work together on a piece of legislation that you introduced. And so I'm really happy to work with you and be here with you today. Having said that, happy to take questions from members of the media. Mark.
First time we've seen you today since signing the energy bill last week. A lot of legislators who were negotiating that were very clear to point out that it was your office negotiating with Exelon about that portion of the bill. I think after the last time they got a bailout, if you will, there was some concern. You even told us that you would not approve of a bailout for Exelon initially. So my question is, why should ratepayers have to pay for a cleaner climate and not polluters?
Well, let me start by pointing out that we had to negotiate with the owners of those nuclear power plants because without them we could not really have had an energy bill. When I talked first about this energy bill, the very first thing I said is the utility companies are not going to write this bill, and they did not write this bill. The negotiation that we had over what support we would provide to the power plants that were losing money started with a thorough independent audit, because 5 years ago when FEJA was passed, that wasn't done. And I wanted to make sure that whatever it is that we were going to come to an agreement about was going to be fair. And I wanted to make sure we weren't overpaying or giving them more than they deserved. So we did that work. And you know what we ended up with? We ended up paying 1/6 on a megawatt hour basis what was paid the last time this was negotiated. 1/6 per megawatt hour. So last time 6 times was paid what we paid this time in order to keep these plants alive and keep those jobs going, thousands of union, good-paying jobs. So that's something that I think we should be proud of. Now, I want to make sure, as you do, that a company like Exelon doesn't get anything that's undeserved, because these folks are part of a deferred prosecution agreement. They committed wrongdoing, and we wanted to make sure that that wouldn't happen ever again. So like I said, they weren't in the room negotiating the energy deal or running the process of the energy deal. And we were insistent, and so were the members of the legislature that are here, that there would be strong ethics provisions in this energy legislation that would protect consumers.
You mentioned the word fair. The question was rather, why are the people picking up the tab? They didn't have anything to do with polluting or causing a warmer planet. Why aren't the polluters picking up that tab?
No, the question is, do you want to lose the power production, the electricity production, or not? Do we want to import energy to the state? This state, by the way, has good low energy rates, and we'll continue to have that relative to other states. And nuclear doesn't pollute carbon into the atmosphere. So we want to make sure that we're not only producing a lot of energy, but it's clean energy, and the only way to do that is to maintain those nuclear plants.
On vaccine mandates, can you clarify? We're getting some questions from farther north about whether or not there was an extension to the vaccine mandates. And that applied just to you also had some news since the last press conference about the deal you reached with a few unions. Can you give us an update on why the moving targets here? Why did you change the deadline?
We were asked by healthcare institutions in particular and a few schools to give a little more time in order to implement the testing regime that is necessary. We've asked people to vax, or in the alternative, they can get tested. And it was hard for some of them to implement that, particularly the healthcare institutions, interestingly, because of not having enough personnel. That personnel is in high demand, as you know, in the hospital, providing health care to people. The testing piece was a difficult one for many of them to carry out. So we gave a little more time for that. And then, as you know, we've got our congregate settings where people are required now to get vaccinated.
We have time for one more. Governor, speaking on vaccine mandates still, with private companies being mandated to get their employees vaccinated, how is the state keeping track of that? Is it a honor system, or are you guys actually looking for records of these employees being vaccinated?
Well, first of all, that was not a state mandate. As you know, it's a federal mandate. No, it's actually the Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor, that is working with those private companies in order to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.